19 centuries ago, on an ordinary evening in a Roman city on the Bay of Naples, nobody knew they were living through their last few hours on Earth. What you're about to see is Pompeii, rebuilt using AI reconstruction from the ruins, the plaster casts, and the letters of a young man who watched it all happen. Most people think this city died in a single fiery blast. That's not what really happened. The truth is slower, stranger, and far more terrifying, because the people of Pompeii had warnings, and they ignored almost all of them. For centuries, historians believed Mount Vesuvius wasn't even a volcano. The Romans who built villas on its slopes thought it was just an unusually fertile mountain, its soil dark and rich from something they never questioned. Grapevines climbed its terraces. Wealthy families vacationed at its base. Nobody in Pompeii had ever seen it erupt, because it hadn't erupted in living memory, not for nearly 2,000 years. They had no word for what was sleeping beneath them. By the time our story begins, warning signs had already been building for almost 2 decades. In the year 62 AD, a massive earthquake tore through the region, collapsing buildings, cracking the forum, and killing livestock in the streets. The people of Pompeii spent years rebuilding. New plaster over old cracks, new columns over shattered ones. They believed they'd survived the worst the earth could throw at them. They had no idea the earthquake wasn't a disaster on its own. It was a symptom. By the summer of 79 AD, Pompeii was a thriving city of roughly 12,000 people, and reconstructing its final days shows something remarkable. This wasn't a primitive settlement. It had fast food counters on nearly every corner, called thermopolia, where residents grabbed hot meals without ever cooking at home. It had a working aqueduct system, public baths, an amphitheatre older than Rome's own Colosseum, and walls covered in political graffiti. Regular citizens campaigning for local candidates in handwritten slogans that still survive today. This was a city that felt permanent. That's exactly why almost no one left when the Tremors started again. In the days before the eruption, locals reported small earthquakes. Annoying, but nothing unusual for a region that had rebuilt after 62 AD. Wells reportedly ran strange. Animals grew restless. None of it was treated as a warning, because none of it looked like anything Pompeii hadn't already survived. This is the moment the reconstruction forces us to sit inside. An entire city going about its evening, unaware that the mountain feeding its vineyards was no longer sleeping. It was waking up. But this wasn't the biggest surprise historians uncovered. It's what happened next, in the early afternoon, that turned an unsettled sky into the deadliest eruption in Roman history. Around midday, Vesuvius tore open. Ash and pumice shot roughly 14 miles into the sky, and for hours it simply rained down on Pompeii. Not lava, not fire, just endless grey stone, accumulating on rooftops until they groaned and collapsed under the weight. Most people assume this falling debris is what killed the city. It's a natural assumption, and it's wrong. The pumice fall gave Pompeii's residents hours, real, usable hours, to flee. Thousands did exactly that, escaping toward the coast with whatever they could carry. We know this in extraordinary detail because of one witness who almost didn't survive to tell it. A young man named Pliny watched the eruption from across the bay and later wrote 2 letters describing exactly what he saw. A column of smoke shaped, in his words, like an umbrella pine, spreading wide at the top before collapsing back down. His uncle, a naval commander, sailed directly toward the disaster to rescue trapped civilians and to observe the phenomenon up close. He never made it back. Those letters remain the only eyewitness account of a volcanic eruption from the ancient world, and archaeologists still use them today to date and reconstruct the disaster hour by hour. Here's what almost nobody expects. The pumice rain, as terrifying as it was, killed relatively few people. The real killer arrived after midnight, and it moved faster than anyone could run. In the early hours of the following day, the collapsing eruption column could no longer sustain itself, and it came down, not as ash, but as a superheated cloud of gas and volcanic debris, racing down the mountainside at speeds that could outpace a modern car. This is called a pyroclastic surge, and it's here that the Reconstruction reveals the moment everything changed. For those who'd waited too long, sheltering in cellars or boat sheds along the coast believing the worst had passed, this surge reached temperatures scientists estimate at several hundred degrees Celsius. Death, in most cases, was instantaneous. This is where the plaster casts come from, one of the most haunting discoveries in archaeology. In the 1860s, an excavator named Giuseppe Fiorelli noticed that human bodies, long since decomposed, had left perfectly shaped voids in the hardened ash. He poured plaster into those voids and pulled out frozen moments. A mother curled around her children, a dog still chained near a doorway, a man shielding his face with his arm. These aren't just artifacts. They're the last physical gesture of real people captured mid-motion at the exact second their world ended. And this is where the story does something unexpected. For decades, guidebooks insisted the eruption happened on August 24th, a date carved into tourist memory for centuries. But newer evidence has quietly overturned that. Recent excavations uncovered charcoal graffiti referencing a date in mid-October, and archaeologists have also pointed to autumn produce found preserved at the site, foods that shouldn't have existed in late August. The disaster that defined a date in nearly every history book may have actually happened 2 months later than everyone assumed. Pompeii wasn't alone. Just a few miles away, the smaller coastal town of Herculaneum met an even stranger fate. While Pompeii was buried under pumice and ash, roughly 10 to 20 feet deep, Herculaneum was closer to the volcano and directly in the path of the pyroclastic surges. It was entombed under material that, in places, reached nearly 60 feet, so dense and so hot that it carbonized wood, scrolls and furniture instead of destroying them, preserving details Pompeii's ash could never capture. For nearly 2,000 years, historians assumed Herculaneum's residents had successfully evacuated because so few bodies were found within the town itself. Then, in the 1980s, excavators reached the ancient shoreline and made a discovery that rewrote the town's ending. Beneath stone boat sheds, they found the skeletons of more than 300 people, men, women and children who had fled to the water's edge, waiting for ships that never came in time. They hadn't escaped at all. They had simply died somewhere no one had thought to look, huddled together facing the sea in the one direction that offered any hope. So why does any of this still matter, 19 centuries later? Because Vesuvius never stopped being active. It last erupted in 1944, and roughly 3 million people now live in its shadow, in the same region where Pompeii once stood. The very warning signs the Romans dismissed, tremors, restless wells, a mountain everyone assumed was safe because it had always been safe, are the same signs modern volcanologists still watch for today. Pompeii isn't just a preserved snapshot of Roman life. It's a case study in what happens when a warning arrives in a language a civilization doesn't yet know how to read. And that brings us back to where we started. A city that believed it had already survived its worst day, 17 years earlier, and used that survival as proof it was safe. The mountain wasn't finished. It was only resting. What's frozen in Pompeii's ash isn't just a disaster. It's the last ordinary evening of a city that never saw what was coming and never got the chance to. If this reconstruction taught you something you didn't expect about Pompeii, that's exactly the point. History rarely happens the way we assume it did. There's another lost city waiting for you, frozen in time, with its own last night still buried beneath the ash. Subscribe and let's go find it.